Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing 3 colorful Christmas cards that I created from one background featuring the Concord 9th Festive Phrases, stamps, and coordinating dies, as well as the Poinsettia quilt top die set. Now, these were part of the September 2022 release from Concord 9th, which is a holiday release. And I've been sharing projects all this month here on my YouTube channel featuring this fabulous release. So today we're going to take some time, make a background that is a little more time intensive, but we're going to get 3 colorful card projects out of it, and I think you're going to love it. And we are going to do a little stripping. A little cardstock stripping, that is. And I have several colors of Concord 9th cardstock here, and I'm just cutting these into 1/4-inch strips. So the colors I've chosen are Ballet Slipper, Honeysuckle, Poppy, Grapefruit, Parsley, Clover, Evergreen, and Sea Glass. All of these are available from Concord 9th. And like I mentioned, I'm just cutting these into 1/4-inch strips. Now this part doesn't take too long. Actually, all of it doesn't really take that long, and it's kind of one of those therapeutic processes that you can do. But since I'm putting a little bit of time and effort into this striped and colorful background, I just wanted to be sure that I shared a few ways to use it. So in addition to my cardstock strips, I also have the Concord 9th silver cardstock. I'm cutting those into 1/8-inch strips. And I also have a piece of scrap computer paper that I've cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Now I'm using some sheet adhesive. This is Altenew sheet adhesive, but you can use whatever your favorite sheet adhesive is, or you can cover the entire scrap piece of paper in some tape runner adhesive. I just find this a little bit faster and a little more secure. And I'm placing that sheet adhesive onto my scrap piece of paper here. Now I'm going to pull off the backer and expose the adhesive. So now I have a piece of scrap paper that's completely covered in double-sided adhesive. And I'm going to start laying these cardstock strips down at an angle. So I'm starting with the Ballet Slipper, and then I'm going to add just this little trim of silver cardstock along the top. And then I'm going to work my way both down and up along this piece of scrap paper to create my pattern. Now I went ahead and cut 3 strips of each color, and this was enough because you can see I have quite a bit hanging off of the scrap piece of paper over on that right-hand side. And so once I run out of these strips, I'm just going to trim off that excess that's hanging over the cardstock on the right-hand side, and then just use those partial strips to complete my pattern. So I like to use my trimmer to do this. You can use a guillotine trimmer if you prefer. And I'm just going to trim off, like I mentioned, all these excess pieces. Now those pieces over to my right, I save those so I can just finish off the pattern here. And now I have this great piece of colorful striped cardstock in my favorite Concord 9th colors, and it is perfect for die cutting. Now, one thing I do want to mention is for the backer, I did use a scrap piece of computer paper or typing paper. That's because if you use cardstock for that backer, this is going to get really thick and it's going to get a little more difficult to die cut. So you want to make sure that you're using a lightweight paper behind all of these strips of cardstock. And once I have everything laid down and trimmed off, I'm going to go ahead and just use my bone folder to make sure all of the edges are pressed into that adhesive that's on my scrap piece of paper there. So now that I have this striped background created, I can go ahead and start die cutting. And I'm starting out with the shadow piece from the Holly Jolly sentiment that's from the Festive Phrases die set from Concord 9th. So I'm just holding my die in place using a little bit of removable tape. I ran that through my Gemini Junior to die cut it out, and now I'm just popping this out. And I love the addition of that little bit of silver in this pattern just to give it some shine. Now I am going to be stacking several die cut sentiments today, and if you don't want to do this, I totally get it, but to me, the added dimension is totally worth it. So I have some Concord 9th white cardstock, and I am using my metal shim in this die cut sandwich so that I get nice clean cuts on all of these, and I'm going to start die cutting all of the white cardstock that I need to create my projects today. So I'm going to cut 3 of each of these dies from this white cardstock. I have the Holly Jolly Detail Sentiment piece. I have the Joyful die, which coordinates with the Festive Phrases stamp set. And I also have this Joy die, which is from the Poinsettia Quilt Top die set. So I'm going to die cut all of these from white cardstock 3 times just to add some dimension behind these sentiments. And as I mentioned before, you totally don't have to do this. If you want to use some foam adhesive, you can. Once I have all of those die cut, I'm going to take the Holly Jolly sentiment once again, and this time I'm die cutting it from some Concord 9th white glitter cardstock. This is going to be my topper layer so that my sentiment has just a little bit of sparkle. Now, because I'm doing so much sentiment layering, I decided to go ahead and use spray adhesive today. I don't always do this, but today, like I mentioned, I'm doing a lot of die cut layering, and so I wanted to make this fast and easy. So I have a box here and I've added a piece of scrap paper into the bottom of the box, and I'm going to use this Elmer's Craft Bond spray adhesive. Now I got a little carried away with the spray adhesive here. You just need a light layer of it, but I felt like it wasn't coming out at first. Now the problem with getting carried away is that the adhesive kind of wants to seep out the edges of the die cut and make the stacked die cut pieces a little sticky on the edges. So I just kind of rubbed over it with my fingers. Now you'll notice that I added spray adhesive to the front side of 2 of these white die cuts, and I stacked them up, and then I took one that has no adhesive at all and added that to the top, and that created my stack of 3 sentiments. So I need to do this with both the holly and the jolly words. I'm also going to be doing it with the joyful die cuts that I created earlier, as well as that joy sentiment die cut that I used from the Poinsettia Quilt Top die set. So here I am just stacking these up. This time I'm taking the one without adhesive. I'm laying it down on the one with adhesive. And I just like to use my fingers to kind of push the edges to where they line up. Now, if it's not exactly perfect, don't worry about it. In the end, this is all about getting dimension and kind of creating that faux chipboard effect. It really does add a lot of interest to your card when you have this dimension and that weight to the die cut sentiment. Now, if you don't want to do the layering, you could just adhere these down without any dimension onto the shadow layer, or you could try to use some foam adhesive behind these, but they are kind of intricate die cuts, and so I decided that die cut stacking was the way to go today. So you can see over on my right hand side, I have that jolly sentiment stacked up. I've placed a clear acrylic block over it while it dries to kind of fuse all those layers together. And now I'm going to take my die cut glitter layer, I'm going to flip it over, add some dots of liquid adhesive to the back, and I'm going to adhere this on top of my stacked die cut pieces. Now I am offsetting this just a little bit, just to give like a plain white shadow to this glitter cardstock. You could line it up perfectly if you want to, but I thought it was kind of fun to offset it. So once I have my glitter pieces adhered on top of the stacked die cut pieces, I'm going to bring in the shadow layer that I die cut from that fun striped cardstock that we created. I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to the back of the Holly Jolly sentiment pieces and place that right on top of the shadow layer. And because I've used all this white and white glitter cardstock, you're going to get a lot of contrast between the sentiment itself and the backer, which I think is a fun way to add color to this card for Christmas time. Now you could change up your striped piece and just use reds and greens, or you could use an alternative color palette like pinks and teals for Christmas. I like to experiment with color around the holidays, and so these cards really speak to what I like to do around the holiday season. Now I have this bee die cut. It's kind of in this little label shape. This is from the new Boughs and Holly die set from Concord 9th. I've die cut it from some white cardstock as well as some black cardstock, and I'm adhering them one on top of the other with just a little bit of offset so it has a white shadow. And behind that, the opening of the word bee, I just added a little piece of vellum to kind of give it a little, I don't know, obscure look. You know, sometimes I don't know why I do the things that I do, but I know that I like them. And so this is one of those instances. Now to finish off my card, I have a panel of Ballet slipper cardstock. I'm adding my Holly Jolly sentiment to the front of that cardstock panel using some foam adhesive. And I'm also adding this bee banner piece with a little bit of foam adhesive as well. Now I created a little heart piece and I used the Up, Up, and Away dies from Concord 9th. I die cut it 3 times from white cardstock, once from silver cardstock, and stacked those all up. And now I'm adhering it right over my Holly Jolly sentiment with a little bit of liquid glue. I adhered my panel onto an A2 size white card base, and that finishes off my first card. Now for my second card, I am using this Joy die. This is from the Poinsettia Quilt Top die set, and I am die cutting it from the striped panel that we created, but I'm kind of angling the die so that the stripes actually go straight across this die cut word. I'm also going to use the shadow piece, and I'm die cutting that from both white and black cardstock. Both of these are Concord 9th cardstock. And I'm using the black piece to just create a little bit of shadow behind this white cardstock because I'm using a lot of white on the finished card project, and it just felt like it needed something to kind of set it off so that you could see the sentiment a little more. Now I love this die here. This is from the Winter Wonderland die set from Concord 9th. It says Fa La La, and I'm die cutting it from the Concord 9th silver cardstock. It is so delicate and so fun and makes just the cutest little accent piece. Once again, I'm stacking up all these die cut layers. So I have my stripe piece and I'm laying it on top of a stack of 3 plain white Joy die cuts. And once I get these all stacked up, I'm going to add it onto that white shadow layer. Now, when you're working with the O, you want to make sure that you put the green side down so that those stripes line up with the other stripes in the J and the Y. So you just kind of want to pay attention to that. And you can see I'm just moving through this and stacking everything up. I kind of had an episode of my favorite TV show going in the background, one that I didn't really have to pay too much attention to. And I just kind of do this. I find it kind of therapeutic at times. And so this is something that you could stack up those white die cuts ahead of time and have them ready to go for your colored cardstock when you're ready to put your cards together. So once I've adhered those onto the shadow layer, I'm going to flip this over, add some liquid adhesive to the back of this white layer, and then just add it on top of the black layer with a slight offset. And you're going to see when I add this onto my card front, that little bit of black showing from behind the sentiment really does help kind of give it some pop off the front of the card. Now I added that Fa La La die cut with a little bit of liquid glue, just kind of laying over the top of my Joy die cut. And now I am taking the 2 large die pieces from the Poinsettia Quilt Top die, and I'm adhering them together and I'm die cutting them both at once. Now this Quilt Top die set is great because you can either just use the stitched portion and die cut it onto your card base or your card front, or you can use the 2 pieces together to make this kind of standalone piece or even a shaped card with the 2 dies together. So the outer layer just kind of die cuts that Poinsettia Quilt Top piece. You can see I've added a little bit of twine to the left side of that quilt piece, added it onto my card base with some foam adhesive, and then I added my Joy sentiment onto my card front, and that finishes off my second card. Now for the third card, I'm going to use the Festive Phrases Coordinating Stamp Set, and I have this joyful word here. I'm going to stamp it onto some Concord 9th white cardstock using the Concord 9th Evergreen ink. Now I love how this stamp set and the die set work so well together because there are dies in the die set that coordinate with the stamp set, but there are also dies that you can use as standalone dies like the Holly Jolly one that I used earlier. So once I've stamped this, I lined up the coordinating joyful die and ran that through my die cut machine. And now I have this perfect die cut word. I'm going to take the leftovers of this panel and just trim a 1/2 inch piece off. This is going to go right under my stamped piece. It's going to give this a pop of color and interest. And I think it's just a fun and easy way to use up the leftovers of this background that we created. So once I've trimmed that down, I trimmed it into an angle on either side. And I have a panel of Concord 9th white cardstock that I'm layering on to some Concord 9th Clover cardstock just to give it a little bit of matte there. I'll add my striped piece onto this card front using a little bit of tape runner adhesive. Yes, I can add things without adding foam behind them, although it's not often. And I used my T-square ruler to make sure I had that striped piece adhered straight onto my card front. Now I'm placing my joyful onto my card front and this little stacked up heart that I die cut from some poppy cardstock from Concord 9th, and I just marked the area that I need to cut out with my scissors. Do you see how I created that opening in the heart so that I could kind of interlink it with the joyful die cut word? So now I'm going to add the joyful stacked up die cut and stamped word onto my card front using some liquid adhesive. And then I'm going to add my heart right on to the end of that L using some liquid adhesive. I think that little snip that I did out of the center of the heart is just a fun way to add this onto the card. And that finishes off card number 3, colorful Christmas cards featuring some fabulous stamps and dies from Concord 9th. I love to create with lots of color around the holidays and Christmas time because sometimes I think it's a little bit unexpected, but you can see these are definitely some fun Christmas cards that anyone would love to get. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. Or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Also, don't forget to join me on Instagram. That is linked in the YouTube description below as well. Over there, we're celebrating Concord 9th's Feature Friday featuring these fabulous stamps and dies. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these projects and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Leave me a comment below. Let me know which of these 3 cards is your favorite. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. To subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.